A Chance for Millionaires by H.L. Mencken. From the New York Evening Mail, 1918. On the general stupidity and hunkerousness of millionaires, a formidable tome might be written, a job I resign herewith to anyone diligent enough to assemble the facts. Not only do they gather in their assets by processes which never show any originality, but are always based upon a few banal principles of swindling, they also display the same lack of resource and ingenuity in getting rid of them. It is years since any American millionaire got his money in any new and stimulating way, and it is years since any American millionaire got rid of his money by any device worthy the admiration of connoisseurs. Setting aside the pathetic dullards who merely hang on to their accumulations, like dogs hoarding bones, the rich men of the Republic may be divided into two grand divisions, according to their varying notions of what is a good time. Those in the first division waste their funds upon idiotic dissipation or personal display. They are the wine jacks, social pushers, and horsey fellows. The thaws, Goulds, and so on. Those in the second division devote themselves to buying public esteem by gaudy charities and a heavy patronage of the arts and sciences. They are the Rockefellers, Carnegies, Morgans, et al. The second crowd, it seems to me, are even more dull and unimaginative than the first, and show less originality. One never hears of them doing anything new. They are forever imitating one another in something old. They build hospitals, or establish libraries, or collect works of art, or endow colleges, or finance some scientific institution or other. And after that, their fancy is exhausted. John D. Rockefeller, probably the most intelligent of them, actually did nothing new with his billions. He staked a few charities. He trustified certain religious enterprises. He capitalized medical research, and that is all. Every one of these things had been done before. John did not invent them, and neither did he greatly improve them. The late John Pierpont Morgan was even less original. The only use he could find for his money was to lavish it on art collections. With the passion of a miser piling up gold, he scoured the world for pictures, pots, furniture, and fabrics, taking the good with the bad, and often, if rumor is to be believed, the bogus with the real. His accumulations finally surpassed those of all other men, living or dead. He was the champion of champions, the John L. Sullivan of art patrons. And then he died, and left all that chaos of beauty and ugliness to his son, who dispersed a large part of it, just as a less opulent son sells off his dead father's worn-out clothes. Such frenzied inordinateness is obviously empty, and perhaps almost maniacal. Morgan's actual taste was probably that of any other rich banker. There are hints of its true dignity in the fact that he bought the original manuscript of Dickens's Christmas Carol and regarded it as a lofty work, and had it read aloud to him every Christmas. Had he been poorer, he would have collected, I dare say, gaudy sets of Bulwer Lytton, Guy de Maupassant, and Balzac, or Denby Sadler etchings, or Rogers groups. He was simply a Philistine with an unlimited bank account. His services to art were scarcely greater than those of a moderately intelligent dealer. I need not call a further roll. You will think of other examples yourself, and you will see at once how little ingenuity they have brought to the spending of their money. The trouble with nearly all of them is simple. Their primary motive in pouring out millions is to gain the goodwill and adulation of the general public, which is to say, of the general mass of dolts and noodles, and so they are restricted to enterprises which fall within the comprehension of such noodles, and excite their admiration. This bars out at once all schemes that are likely to appeal to a civilized man, for it is a peculiarity of such a man that he is usually in favor of whatever the mob is against. and against whatever it is in favor of. The millionaire who would make a genuine splash with his money must reject this common motive and adopt a contrary motive. That is to say, he must set himself to do not what is popular, but precisely what is most unpopular. So far, not one of the fraternity has shown imagination enough for that business. Meanwhile, the opportunities are so numerous and so inviting that they bring tears to the eyes. Even old ideas may be improved, embellished, made mellow. Think, for example, of the scheme of the late D.O. Mills. He erected the two so-called Mills Hotels in New York and was canonized as a great philanthropist. But suppose he had built them not in New York, but at Newport, Palm Beach, or the Virginia Hot Springs. Suppose he had set them down in the very midst of American snobdom, and then invited all his decayed mechanics, unsuccessful peddlers, and gentlemen out of work to come in and make themselves at home. As things stand, Mills is remembered by 1 American and 2 million. Even many of his guests have scarcely heard of him. Had he been a man of originality, his name would be as immortal as that of Lorenzo Borgia. On the theological side, many stimulating enterprises invite. I often think of the noble divertisement that John D. Rockefeller could have had by giving $100 million to the Mormons, first to finance a nationwide campaign in favor of polygamy, then to buy legislation authorizing it from the state legislature, and then to pay for a fight to the finish before the Supreme Court of the United States, with all the leading barristers of the nation for the defense. The combat would have been gaudy, thrilling, incomparable. Millions of Americans would have been converted. The newspapers would have fallen one by one, and in the end it might have been possible to put through a constitutional amendment, not only authorizing polygamy, but even making it obligatory. John got no such fun out of the Rockefeller Institute, nor out of his gifts to Baptist missions in Cochin China. Carnegie got no such fun out of his libraries. Morgan got no such fun out of his squirrel-like hoarding up of dingy paintings and moth-eaten old sofas. A still more gorgeous opportunity offers itself in the South. Among the native fauna down there are 10 million colored folk of defective culture and inflammable habits. Theoretically, these Moors are all Christians, but as a matter of fact, their faith is still adulterated by many ideas inherited from their African ancestors. The average religious ceremony among them is wild and vociferous. Not infrequently, indeed, the gendarmes have to shut off their deafening supplications that the adjacent gentry may be able to get some sleep. These facts have often suggested to the judicious that Christianity, in its authentic form, is a cult not quite suited to the genius of the darker races. In Africa, where it has had to meet the competition of Moslemism, it has, in fact, usually succumbed. Hundreds of thousands of native Africans, converted by the gallant efforts of our own missionaries, have later gone over to the Crescent with a whoop, and sometimes butchered their late pastors in celebration of their apostasy. From end to end of the dark continent, indeed, Mohammedanism has swept like a whirlwind. No other known faith appeals so eloquently to the untutored Ethiop. What I here hint at is the millionaire who imported a shipload of Muslim evangelists from Arabia, schooled them in English by intensive cultivation, and then turned them loose in Georgia. That such a millionaire at all events would suffer little from boredom during the ensuing carnage, and that his name would have an assured place in the history of the Confederate States. I am a poor man, but if the hat is passed, I shall be glad to contribute to the project $1 million in Mississippi bonds of the issue of 1838.